in this occasion, we'll invite Michael Milligan, Ph.D. But now we'll show you the video because you know that the time now in the United States is quite different here. Maybe there it's about 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Okay. I asked the committee to show the video of Mr. Milligan. Mr. Milligan is the CEO of American ABET, yeah? American Board of Engineering Educations. The committee, please show us the video. And for your information, that after this, there is question and answers, and also maybe comment from the participants. There are 2 systems. We can invite you to speak directly or to make questions live. Okay, committee, please. How about the video of Milligan, Mr. Milligan?
Some thoughts as we get into the conference, into the workshops. And so I've prepared some slides to facilitate the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and share those with you. One of the things that I think is important with respect to developing accrediting systems and you know, sort of promoting those is to really look at why we accredit in the first place and how we can communicate that with our constituents. So I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Also, I thought it would be worthwhile talking about some of the lessons learned that we've experienced with respect to how we've improved our processes over the years, and I'll talk about a couple sort of significant ones that I think would be worth sharing. So the first question is, why do we accredit in the first place? Well, I think we know for the most part that accreditation demonstrates that programs, institutions are committed to improving the educational experience for students, and that's kind of the bottom line. We do that through a number of different ways, you know, meeting threshold standards, going through the quality control process, and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's really about the students and what they're experiencing when they're you know, enrolled in the programs. Certainly, you know, developing and you know, evaluating programs against the standards are important because that gives graduates and all the other constituents involved, you know, industry, parents, etc., a sense that, you know, they're being prepared to be successful in whatever profession that they are pursuing. So certainly the threshold standards are a critical piece of what we do, and you know, that's underscored by this idea of confidence. So again, there's our kind of our list of our constituents, you know, students and their families, the institution's faculty, industry, the general public, everyone that really counts on academic institutions to prepare individuals to be practicing engineers or computer scientists, what have you. And so with that in mind, we at ABET like to talk about this idea of confidence, and ultimately that's the product that we provide. You know, we have a process, of course, that involves evaluating programs and making sure they meet standards and so forth. But really, it's you know, it's all about preparing students to be successful when they graduate to enter a global workforce. Again, depending upon their field of study, you know, their professions would vary. We're also quite concerned and spend a lot of time with our processes, our criteria and our processes, because that's how we do the work of accreditation. So we need to make sure people have confidence in our in the way we do business. And so certainly end goal really being that, you know, these students are going to graduate, have all the skills necessary, and use that, make sure that knowledge base and the skills that they have to make the world a better, more comfortable or a more sustainable place. And I like to point that out because it's really the impact that they have when they graduate that makes a difference. And you know, ABET's made up of a number of professional societies that are involved in the work that we do, and without exception, each one of those technical societies, again, is also focused on sort of developing technology for the benefit of humanity. So we are aligned in that area. One of the areas that I think is important to look at is what value do institutions take away from the whole accreditation process, and I think starting there is a good place. So this happens to be the University of Maryland, not too far from our headquarters in Baltimore. But basically the first thing is that it really indicates that there's this third-party confirmation of the quality of their programs and their institution. And so we play a part in that because we accredit a number of programs at the university. But nonetheless, we are viewed as that non-biased sort of third party that can come in and use the criteria that we've developed to determine whether or not they meet our standards. The institutions and programs, gain a lot from that recognition, certainly internationally as well as nationally, and that's important for lots of reasons, of which I'll touch on here in just a moment. Also by the profession itself. So the professionals that then go off and recruit students want to come to your institution because they know you're preparing your students well. Again, accreditation helps play a role in that. And then, of course, recognition by peers. Peers come from other institutions, come from industry, whatnot. And, the commitment to quality through accreditation speaks volumes in terms of, the importance that your institution and program places on preparing students well and quality. I also would say that, having an accredited program goes a long ways towards attracting, the strongest faculty and students. And we all are after, top-notch faculty, good faculty. We're also after the best students because it makes our programs better. So again, our commitment to some quality process, I think, helps facilitate that. And then in some cases, funding does as well. I know in our country, in the United States, there are a number of scholarships that fund student education, and they're one of the requirements is that the programs that they are studying are accredited by ABET or, depending upon the discipline, another programmatic accreditor. The other important constituent, of course, is faculty. They're delivering the program on a regular basis. And so what value does accreditation bring to them? Well, first and foremost, I think one of the most obvious areas is this idea of best practice in education. Now, faculty is certainly going to be matter area experts in their specific discipline. Again, it could be some discipline of engineering, it could be computing, it could be some other STEM discipline, but nonetheless, they are matter area experts. But there's a difference between that and being a professional educator and everything that goes into being an effective and expert educator. So providing them this environment for best practices in education really helps towards this idea of being a professional educator. The structured mechanisms for continuous improvement that are required as part of our accreditation process allows for this self-improvement of the program and of the faculty and their teaching methods and again how they construct their part of the program for students. It also shows to the faculty that the institution is committed. Okay, and that's important because again, if you're a faculty and you're interested in seeking a new position at an institution, you're going to want to go someplace where you know that the institution is committed to quality, not just in what they say, but what they do in terms of the kind of facilities they have, the financial resources, their accreditation, the training, all that kind of thing. So again, this accreditation, I think, helps underscore this commitment. Now, another important constituency, and of course maybe the most important, is the students themselves, okay? And they have a lot of options, especially in today's world where there are not just the residential face-to-face kind of offerings that students can experience, but also the online programs that are offered throughout the world. And so how do we help them select quality programs? Well, one of the first ways to do that certainly is to make sure that the program's accredited by a reputable accreditor like ABET or one of our partners in engineering and computing or other STEM disciplines or whatever discipline happens to be. Because what does it say to the student? Again, that the institution is committed to them, to making their experience a good one. Again, it's a third-party quality confirmation, so that's something that can, they can view ABET or a like accreditor and say, hey, that program's accredited, so I know that I'm in good shape. Certainly, it's going to help them with their employment because many employers will use accreditation for that first criteria before they even get out and look at individual institutions and programs. They want to make sure that they don't waste their time with students that aren't prepared, so they'll go right to accredited programs. And then in many cases also with licensure, depending upon where you are in the world, licensing can be required for for you to be successful and to practice even. And so many times the licensing agencies, certainly in the United States at the state level, for example, for engineers would require that student graduate from an ABET accredited program or in some other way demonstrate that they meet the same level of competence. So it makes the transition to, again, to licensing much easier. Industry, critical customer, if you will, because in many or probably most cases, they're the prime customer for the graduates that come out of STEM programs, engineering programs specifically. And so what do they view accreditation? How does it help them? Well, I've talked about these entry levels for the profession, and that's true. It certainly, if a industry wants to go hire a mechanical, electrical, system engineers, whatever, industrial engineers, they have to have a sense that they have the foundation to be successful, because certainly their education is only going to last for so long, and then they have to have they have to continue the professional development, and that's all going to be predicated on them having a good foundation and learning everything that an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, or an industrial engineer should know. So certainly that's going to aid them in recruiting, because they'll know the programs to go to where students are being well prepared. They also have a great opportunity to actually influence the educational process, and part of what ABET went through, and I'll talk about lessons learned here in a little bit. This was exactly what happened. Industry came in and helped redirect to a degree how we did business, and so they do it in a number of ways. Each program, ABET accredits over 4,000 programs. Each and every one of those has some level of industry advising, whether it's a formal group, a committee, council, whatnot. And so they advise individual programs themselves. We have an industrial advisory group that advises us. I'll show you who those are here in just a moment. But having this opportunity to provide feedback to the programs about what students are doing well, or the graduates rather are doing well, what they're not, where they could improve. This idea of giving them a sort of a broader global perspective on education and what the needs are from industry is important as well, because engineering specifically is a very global profession, and we want to be able to hire and assign engineers to projects that deal with people from different countries and different design centers and manufacturing and so on and so forth. And so certainly having a global perspective is critically important nowadays. This slide basically is kind of just a quick snapshot of some of our industry partners over this past few years at the ABET Board of Directors level. Now, I mentioned the fact that there are industry advisory groups associated with individual programs. These are actually members who have advised us at the board level. Okay, so they've helped ABET at a more strategic level, and you can see recognizable names up there. The one comment I would say, though, is that we're really eager to include more like Amazon. So you see Amazon.com there at the bottom, one of our newer members, because we need more input from sort of the new economy industries, if you will. So those, and especially in the high-tech area, like the Amazons of the world, and maybe Googles, and those kinds of industry, because they hire so many graduates, so many STEM graduates. We need to know what kind of skills, knowledge, abilities, all those kind of things that those kinds of industries are looking for. So we will continue to obviously work with our partners that we've had forever, but also, we want to seek out new and some of the newer ones as well. So here's a good example, I think, of the impact on industry, and this is not something that I created, other than the fact that I went to this website. It's called Indeed.com. It's basically a job search criteria of certain qualifications and so forth, and it'll find jobs. It'll go to employment websites. Anyway, I just put ABET in, so if you see that word right there, it says ABET, and then I searched for jobs, and I came up with 6,000, well over 6,000 jobs. So the reason I show this is because this is purely an unsolicited example of employers saying that ABET accreditation is either required or desired for application for specific jobs. So again, this was back in February, but you could do this at any time. The numbers change daily almost because of the job listings and delistings and so forth. But nonetheless, I think it's a good example of industry saying, hey, we want graduates that come from programs that are accredited because we know they're of quality. The other area that we spend a lot of time in is promoting the value of accreditation. And so here's an example. This was what we call an issue brief, sort of a white paper, if you will, that was published this spring. and it's the value of accreditation with really an industry perspective. You know, one of the challenges we've always had is to demonstrate what is the value of accreditation for the individual. And so could we track individuals and sort of like take someone who's come out of an accredited program, you know, kind of track their career, then look at someone who has not come out of an accredited program, you know, kind of track their career, look at differences in perhaps earning potential, career advancement, you know, positions and so forth. And then while that would be really nice to have, it's really difficult to do, takes a lot of time, very labor intensive, expensive. I think just in general it's difficult. So what we like to do is get sort of like the testimonials from industry people that say, hey, why would I bother to go seek out graduates out of a particular program that's accredited by, in this case, ABET? And so this is an example of that. And you're welcome to go read it. You can see the website, the web link there. Go to our website and look under issue briefs, and you can find it and download it and have a look at that. But this is important because it demonstrates to the world that, in this case, industry cares. And so having that as you know, information that's available to the public and to others, I think is important. You know, I'm all about leadership and institutional support, and so I think without either strong leadership and going hand in hand with institutional support, it's going to be difficult to be successful in terms of having programs accredited and sustainable and so forth. And so I like to use examples. Here's an example. Just a few years ago, it says back in 2016, I guess, where Harvard reintroduced some engineering programs in their School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And you can see this is the quotation that came from the dean at the time. And it was just good to have an example of, you know, an institution saying, hey, we believe strongly that accreditation provides value to our program and to our students and so forth. And so, again, just an example of, you know, recognition. And having these kinds of examples, I think, are important to demonstrate to others that, you know, there's real value, and it's important to be, you know, to seek quality and through accreditation. Dr. Daryl Pines, president of the University of Maryland, was a guest speaker at one of our symposia a few years ago, and he, at that time, was the dean of the School of Engineering, but nonetheless, he talked a lot about this engagement of students and how they want to be engaged in, you know, solving societal and global environmental sort of challenges, and how we have a responsibility to work with them, to engage them and to excite them and to motivate them and all that. And why I point that out is I think that goes a lot towards our initial, if you remember, our core purpose of making the world a better place and so forth. But also, you know, through our criteria we do this. You know, we have in our criteria things that talk about ethics, that talk about cultural, environmental, social, basic sustainability. Okay, making students aware of the importance of that when they design solutions to problems. And certainly having people like Dr. Pines come out and reaffirm that and in front of hundreds of people, I think is really important and goes a long ways towards, again, underscoring the value that educators place on accreditation. Partnerships are also critically important. This was a panel that I hosted again, at one of our symposiums a few years back. And the only reason I point this out is because I think it shows, it illustrates a good example of the breadth of partnerships that are important in nurturing. You know, you develop them, nurture them, build them into, you know, to a strong ecosystem, if you will. But we have representatives from academia, the University of California, San Diego, I think in this case, from the LA County utilities, so a provider of basic utilities that hire a lot of STEM graduates. And then we even had a representative of this time from the Association for Wine Growers. And why wine growing? Well, you know, big business in California. This conference was in San Diego. Big in California, of course. Right now, actually, they're having some devastating wildfires that are destroying a lot of vineyards. And so, you know, the graduates that are coming out of our programs are going to go and help solve these problems like climate change, you know, brought on by global warming and so forth. And certainly, you know, if you're in the business of producing wines, climate change is a big deal. So again, developing partnerships across a broad group of constituents, something that we're always focused on. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about lessons learned. I don't want to, this isn't extensive, it's just kind of some some general thoughts about how we made things better, and some recommendations perhaps for you to look at as well. And I think one of the probably the biggest lesson learned in terms of focus area is, and this has generally been the case for us, but it's really important to reemphasize the importance of fair and impartial peer review. I think in some cases we may take that for granted, but it actually takes a lot of effort to maintain this. We have strong principles for conflicts of interest. We have strong mechanisms for consistency to make sure that when we're out looking at programs, we typically will accredit upwards of 800 to 900 programs every cycle. And with so many people involved and so many decisions being made, we have to guarantee some level of consistency so that people feel that their programs are being treated fairly and that they're fairly, the kind of accreditation actions that may result from certain circumstances in their program would be similar to something that would occur at a program that had also the same or similar kind of circumstances. So, professional practitioners, people are out in the field working, educators of like disciplines, critically important, so you're not getting bureaucrats involved, for lack of a better description, right? You have people that actually understand the field and the discipline. That goes a long ways to providing value back to the institution. And then again, the uniform accreditation criteria and the policies, again, that's back to the consistency part. So ensuring those two things really goes a long ways. We do not rank programs. I know that there are some accreditors around the world that do. The reason we don't is, well, there's several reasons we don't, but the biggest reason I think is because it can indirectly influence the accreditation process. And what I mean by that is if programs understand that part of how they do on accreditation will directly influence their ranking in terms of, ABET ranking, one civil engineering program against another, they may take certain actions that would not necessarily benefit the accreditation part or the sort of the student's educational experience, but be more focused on how do we get their ranking higher. And sometimes that could be, that's just a distraction and doesn't need to happen. So we're not involved in rankings or other organizations that do that kind of thing. So that fits that need for those people that want to pay attention to ranking, but we don't do that and have never done that. And I think it's an important aspect to kind of step back from that because again, it can inherently affect the accreditation process and not necessarily in a positive way. So again, I think that's a lesson learned. The other is, we're involved in continuous processes, and one of the things that programs have to understand is that accreditation isn't the end goal. It's not quality education is the end goal. Preparing students properly to be successful is the end goal. So whatever process they have in place is going to be continuous. We're going to come once every 6 years, typically, just for a few days. The whole process. When we're engaged with the institutions, just a couple months, but it's kind of a snapshot in time, if you will, ensuring that programs are actually doing what they say they're doing and following the continuous improvement process. You have a formal quality assurance program in place and so forth. So really continuous, emphasizing the idea that this is a continuous process focused on excellence in education is really where it's all about. Okay. Now, one of the things that we did recently, I guess 30 years ago isn't that recent, but considering ABET's 90 years old, I guess it qualifies. But nonetheless, in the early 90s, many of our constituents weren't satisfied with the existing system because it wasn't producing students that they felt were ready to enter the profession. Okay. And primarily where they felt students were lacking was in the professional skills. So things like communications, effective communicators, okay, didn't necessarily see that. Teaming, were they effective team members because, any job that students are going to go in is going to require teaming. What about, appreciation for ethics and decision making and so on and so forth. So that was one of the glaring areas that was determined that, hey, we really weren't doing a good job looking at that area. So what we did is we embarked on this project of upgrading our system, and we called it EC 2000, Engineering Change 2000, or Engineering Criteria 2000. And it was started in the early 90s and was pretty much transformational. What changed significantly was, we put all our focus on our efforts to determine what students were learning, not necessarily what they're being taught. I think there's a lot of research that says, you can be the best lecturer in the world, but typically students take away 5% of what they hear in class. And that's assuming, everybody's kind of at the same level, but we all know students learn differently at different levels and so forth. So how can you ensure students are really learning? Many examples of students, conversely, that understand material really well can do problems, but for some reason are not good test takers and so forth. So, relying on examinations and graded lab exercises reports, not necessarily the best way to indicate student performance in terms of what they know. So let's focus on what they're learning. So we're all about learning outcomes now, because that's what's important. So we look at learning outcomes. Now in EC 2000, because this concern about professional skills, not so much on the technical skills, we retained all the good things about the technical, scientific, engineering sort of knowledge and abilities, but we really emphasize the skills development, the professional skills development, and really tried to integrate more on this idea of ethics and contextual considerations, again, such as economic, social, sustainability, all those kinds of things. Okay. We focused on the continuous improvement. I kind of mentioned that already, this idea of a holistic approach, as opposed to us just coming once every 6 years, kind of going through a checklist and not seeing the program or not engaging for the next number of years. It wasn't really providing programs very much value. The other thing is, programs felt that somehow we would be in their way of innovation because we were very strict in terms of our checklist and what our requirements were. Well, our criteria now are such that they provide much more opportunities for programs to be very unique, and I think that's well documented now. You can look at across the programs that AEESEAP accredits, and you'll find very different types of programs within the same disciplines. Okay. Holistic approach to program quality, institutional quality. Of course, I think most people are familiar with this cycle of, you're planning, you do, you check, you act. So, but doing this in a formal way and setting it up formally was new to a lot of programs. And so the benefits, of course, are, we're all engineers, and we like process, we like data, right? We like examination, and that's what this is all about, right? We set up our objectives, we conduct our programs, we assess, we collect data from how well students are learning, and then we improve the program to benefit students. And so accreditation basically sits on top of all this. And again, it's kind of that snapshot in time, and it goes through these process of self-examination. We look at how well you're complying with criteria and provide direct feedback. And so that's one of the primary requirements and benefits of what we're doing with our process. We actually funded a study not too long after introducing this new system. It was a little bit of too early, in my opinion. I think we should have waited another, 5-10 years to even do it. But there's some pressure from a lot of constituents to determine was this new system even working. And so we hired Penn State University in their education department to do a study, and they looked at these two classes, 94 and 2004. And what did they find? Well, basically, not much of a surprise, but again, these professional skills, these this idea of ethics and global issues and so forth, there was a much better understanding of that. So from that point of view, very successful. I think we probably want to reproduce this report in some kind of way, this study in some kind of way, but at this point in time, there's no real plan to do that. But I think I would think it'd be interesting. What did the institution say about this? They thought our accreditation process was better because it focused attention on education, as opposed to more like where we were concerned about credit hours and that sort of thing. It was much more focused on, again, the educational experience. Were students learning? So no doubt that was a positive. Increased the emphasis on teaching, both from the faculty and administration point of view. So both together really focused on this idea of teaching, and now much more effort on sort of training faculty to be better educators, I guess is probably the best way to do that. And then finally, self-examination. That's probably the most beneficial part, because this formal process that's implemented requires self-examination. And I think most of us know that have gone through anything like this, that process in itself will generate a lot of benefit in adding value to making decisions that impact the program itself. So asking questions like, how well our graduates doing, what about our constituents, what do they need, what's the kind of feedback, and then integrating this all into how you do business in general, because initially it can be a substantial amount of work to set up your system and kind of go through this process. But if you're strategic about it and you do it in a way that's sustainable, then it just becomes part of how you do business, and you use it as a tool. And I know my experience when I was a faculty, it was excellent. At the end of the semester, we do reviews of the courses, and then from that, we would propose changes to maybe laboratories, exercises, maybe different textbooks, that kind of thing. So anyway, once it's integrated, this becomes how you do business, and it's well accepted and so forth. So let me just finish up here and just talk about just a few kind of takeaways, some key points. I think communicating this value of accreditation is going to be critically important to developing and maturing accreditation systems, gaining real acceptance. Okay, so I think one of the ways you do that is through strong industry support. So whatever you can do to kind of promote that. Certainly these industrial advisory groups are going to be involved with programs at the program level, are going to help. Certainly doing it at the governance level of the organization, the accreditor itself, is important. Again, we do that at our board level. We have a group that has committed to helping us, and so we rely on them a lot for for guidance on different topics. Developing partnerships, I talked about that already, but again, this goes kind of towards the first two topics of communicating the value and gaining even greater industry support. The more people you get involved from a broader constituency base, I think goes a long ways towards again underscoring the value of the work that we do. The last thing I would say is continue improving your own processes. Okay, ABET itself is committed to process improvement. We're actually certified by the International Standards Organization, or ISO. We have as you can see, the 9001-208 certification. From what I understand, there's not many accreditors in the world that are certified in this way. We felt it was important because it's a commitment by ABET, the organization, to quality standards, quality processes, just like we expect our programs to be committed. So, leading by example, I think is important. Plus, it provides management. In my case, I'm the senior manager of the organization. Provides me a lot of tools to make sure that we don't miss things on a regular basis, that we're doing things we're supposed to be doing, and it provides us an opportunity to improve our processes as well. So, I guess with that, I'd like to thank you for the time, inviting me to come and open up this workshop. This work's really important, and again, I'm sorry I can't be there with you, and I'm sorry we can't be together, but hopefully we'll have an opportunity within the next year or two. So with that, thank you again, and I hope you have a very successful conference.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milligan, and thank you for